Hey everyone, Rob here, and we have updates on the earthquakes, volcanic eruption, everything going on in Iceland. It's January the 8th. Now, we have two of our favorite people shown here. We have Þorvaldur Þórðarson, professor of volcanology at the University of Iceland, as well as we have Benedikt Gunnar Ófeigsson, geophysicist and head of deformation measurements at the Icelandic Meteorological Office. Now, Þorvaldur believes that the volcanic eruptions may start again at the Sundhnúk crater series on the Reykjanes Peninsula within the next coming days. He points out that the land rise that's been going on, and it's continuing at a pace. It hasn't really slowed down. We see it kind of picking up again, but the land rise fell a few hours before the eruption in December, but it has not happened this time. He says it hasn't started to fall down yet. If a clear curve appears on GPS measurements, for example, in Svartsengi, it could mean that an eruption is occurring. Now, Benedikt, again, head of deformation measurements at the Icelandic Meteorological Office, he said in an interview with Morgunblaðið that it could have been a coincidence that the land fell before the last eruption. He wasn't sure that it could be interpreted that way. It could have just been a coincidence. There was only one station that showed this sort of fall in land rise. There is a natural fluctuation of this kind of data, and sometimes that fluctuation falls right into a signal, and then it looks like there is something there when there's not. So there's no noticeable warning before the last eruption, except when the earthquake started, and then deformation also started, which we saw very clearly in the real-time processing. There was no great anticipation. In any case, there was nothing clear that could be used as a warning, he says. Now, according to Þorvaldur, the development of the last few days resembles the scenario before the eruption on December 18th. The land rise in Svartsengi has now become bigger than that land rise that had happened at Eldvarpen and is approaching the same height as last time. He thinks that this is a sign that we're actually slipping into one more event. However, there's always the possibility that less, land rise and seismic activity means that it's going out of control. There's something that could be happening. The other scenario, of course, which Þorvaldur thinks is more likely, that the magma storage is filling up and has reached its tolerance limit. The roof and the walls and everything has been stretched as much as possible, and just like a rubber band, if you stretch and stretch, it gets harder to stretch, and the more you do it until eventually it breaks. And it could be that we've reached these tolerance limits or within the next couple of days. And if that's right, that we could have an eruption or some kind of event going on in the next few hours or the next few days, is what Þorvaldur is saying. Now, he believes that there's an eruption. It's going to be similar to the one that started on December 18th. It might be small overall, but powerful in the beginning. There is now not a huge amount of magma accumulated in this shallow chamber. This is between 5 to 10 million cubic meters of magma, which to us, of course, seems like a lot. But to them, they say is not a lot in the relative size of things. And so it might be a small and short eruption, but, spectacular at the beginning. As for the exact location of the new eruption, Þorvaldur says it's difficult to say. Most likely, it's going to erupt in the same areas as last time. New magma that would then flow through the eruption channel that formed in December from the magma reservoir and to the surface. It's likely that it would be the easiest to go that way, open up that channel again, and then the magma flows up and becomes lava, of course. If there is magma in this vent, it is not solidified in any way. A new magma sort of coming up would have a really easy time of emerging there then. And like Þorvaldur, Benedikt believes that the next eruption is coming soon. He says it's quite likely. So that's, something very interesting to see. Now, again, Benedikt here, geophysicist, head of deformation measurements, again, he reiterates the land rise is still increasing. It's not slowing down as it was before, although, of course, he does note specifically that it's too early to make any strong conclusions. There's still considerable seismic activity in the magma tunnel, although most of these earthquakes are quite small. And again, he can say that this development can be interpreted in a number of ways. For example, that the inflow is slowing down, but now it's increasing again. And it may also be that we're seeing some changes in the way that this particular area behaves. It may be spreading, or that it was spreading and therefore the speed was slowing down and now it's not. And we need better data and better instruments and more interpretation before we can really see these trends with any true conclusion. He says that he would like to see an INSAR satellite image of all of this, adding that the satellite will pass this week, but it's uncertain how good the images will be due to the weather conditions, which in Iceland this week is going to be super cloudy, and it's kind of a storm going on. He says again, no one should be surprised if it erupts again soon. And if we only predict the flow that has been estimated, it should be about, a week before the same volume was seen in the eruption in December is reached. And it will be something like 11 million cubic meters or something like that. On the other hand, the height of this seems to have risen somewhat above what it was on December 18th, so it's difficult to interpret exactly what all of this means. Such areas and systems don't necessarily behave the same between two events. The Earth's crust and all the conditions change with every single eruption, he says. So there's a lot sort of being interpreted there. Moving on, we can see a map here of seismic activity over the past little while, and something that was a little bit notable you can see in the dark red over here near Hveragerði. There was an earthquake with a magnitude of 2.3, which struck north of Hveragerði from 3 in the morning or something like that. And the people of the town, they obviously felt it because it was pretty close. The earthquake originated at a depth of 5.3 kilometers and almost 4 kilometers southwest of Hrumdartindi. That's really hard. It's a hard word to pronounce. There's also smaller earthquakes in the same area around 6:30 in the morning, but nothing too intense. If we take a look at the earthquake data here, we can see over time we're not seeing a huge amount of seismic activity, and they're all, again, pretty low with the exception of this single one here, which we just mentioned. Last but not least, we've talked a lot about building defenses around Grindavik. The fortification of all of these defenses, they're all starting to take shape. We have some images here coming from Embret, who have access to the area. Contractor's been working tirelessly for the last 24 hours on the construction. Work on them began on January 2nd, and right after the green light was given by the Minister of Justice to start this, start the construction. So she proposed, the Minister of Justice was Guðrún Hafsteinsdóttir. At a government meeting, she proposed just before the end of the year that the first phase of fortifications at Grindavik begin as soon as possible. And then, of course, the first round, only half the height of the upper part will be built, and then they're going to reassess the situation and continue on going from there. Everything's been going pretty well, and you can see another photo here of some of the workers, going through this phase. And there's been a drive-through bridge been installed over a heating pipeline that's west of Grindavik Vegur, and they're going to be continuing to work on this. And there's about 40 people, I believe, is what they're saying, are currently working somewhere between 30 to 40 people. So they've been working 24-hour shifts since January 2nd. And it's a lot more work than the first one because they have to bring in more materials in order to do this. So they're working, the part that they're working on now is 1,450 meters to Grindavik Vegur, and then it extends them 400 meters further to the west. So there's a lot of work being done and a lot of news coming out where we have a bunch of volcanologists and geophysicists and people from the Icelandic Meteorological Agency, everyone saying, prepare for an eruption because it's going to happen any day. So that's it for the news for today. Leave some stuff in the comments if you have any questions. If you're going to the Blue Lagoon, let me know how it is because they are now open and apparently you can drive there yourself. So until next time, thank you so much.